As you begin to open and explore this journey, everything that interferes with your tuning to God within yourself, you just start to let it go. Share your blessing. Breathe deeply. I mean, once that opens, everything else starts to just become stuff you play with. You're just playing with a substance, including your own body and your own melodrama. Each of you has a melodrama, don't you? Then the only thing that's coming through is God. Really mellow, right? Just set out the vibes. You've got a plan of who you are, where you're going, and what your future holds. And every moment you're reciting who you are, and you're getting everybody around you to reinforce the model you have of who you must be. If you're a good guy, you've surrounded yourself with people who say, he's a really good guy. Okay? If you're a sexy girl, you got everybody saying, gee, she's sexy. Wow. Just send out the vibes. Know me, know me, know me, know me. This is who I am, this is who I am, this is who I am, this is who I am. When the transformation has occurred and you're not busy being anybody, then the only thing that's coming through is God. Then just like a river or a tree, you are a perfect statement of the Dharma, of the flow. And then you never are out of the flow of the universe again. You begin to recognize your true identity, just a little bit, just enough so that everything you're doing, you don't have to change a step in the dance. You don't have to drop out. You don't have to go to a cave. You don't have to wear clothes or shave your head or wear funny clothes or do anything. The process can changes in your being, not in your doing. And as your being changes, your doing will change, but it will change very subtly. So that you might drive the same bus yesterday that you drive tomorrow, but tomorrow when you drive the bus, everybody that gets on the bus gets a certain vibrational space created by your being that allows them to touch a place in them that's just a little deeper. It's interesting about the word love. See, a lot of you deal with, am I in love with her, am I in love with him? We used to be in love, but now we're not. Love, the concept of love. There's a way of looking at love to understand it a little better. When you say, I am in love with him or I am in love with her, one of the ways of understanding it is that that other person is a stimulus that awakens in you a place where you are love. Because when you are around your beloved, the whole world starts to look different. There's a certain luminous quality that takes over in the universe when you're really in love. And you connect it to the person and you get hooked on the person. Because that person is your connection. It's your connection to the place in you where you are loved. Because you don't know how to get there other than through that connection. And then you say, there I was judging again. Here, Ma, you take the judgment. You don't have to do anything about it. You just begin to be in love with the universe without even saying hello. Your heart is an incredible mechanism for caring about all of mankind and womankind and childhood and all sentient beings. But without truth, it runs rampant and it destroys as much as it helps. And it destroys as much as it helps. The tantric technique is to take the stuff of your daily life and start to offer it up. What you do is you begin to, quote, consecrate your life. Instead of God being some kind of an abstraction that you deal with in Sundays or that was connected with your parents or, well, I don't know, it's something nice, you begin to recognize your true identity just a little bit, just enough so that everything you're doing, you don't have to change a step in the dance. You don't have to drop out. You don't have to go to a cave. You don't have to wear clothes or shave your head or wear funny clothes or do anything. Just send out the vibe. At that point, if they're ready and they can let go enough and trust their own intuitive sense, they look back and here we are, in love. And the only way you're going to feel at home ever again in this universe is when your soul acknowledges its true identity. Without even saying hello.
I want to die without any scars.
And you find that when you are in that love, then everything that brings you away from it, which are only your own attachments, become very visible and noticeable, and you keep offering them up to the mother. So you're loving everybody until somebody does something you don't approve of, and you judge them. And immediately the whole thing turns off, and you've gone out of the flow, and you don't feel the love. And then you say, there I was judging. Here, Ma, you take the judgment. And here we are, in love. Every one of us has this stuff that we're sucking everybody into around us, and we're just hoping desperately that somebody will come along that will not get stuck in it. But the thing is, we're really masters at the game of seduction. And we keep seducing people into thinking we are who we think we are, when all we wanted was one person who says, look, that's just who you think you are. You're not going to suck me into that one.
I want you to do me a favor.
Yeah, sure.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
And here we are, in love. At that point, if they're ready and they can let go enough and trust their own intuitive sense, they look back and here we are, in love. In absolutely peaceful, conscious love, and there's nothing that has to be done about it. And it's as if at that moment, that place in them has been watered.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
What do you want me to do? You just want me to hit you?
Come on, do me this one favor.
Why?
Why? I don't know why. I don't know. Never been in a fight. You?
No, but that's a good thing.
No, it is not. How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight.
Just like ground that's being prepared. They may not be able to maintain it. Like some of you may be experiencing a feeling at this moment in this place because of the nature of the loving beings that have gathered here to bless us.
I want to die without any scars.
And you'll go away and you'll lose it. You'll, quote, come down. But that's okay. Don't knock it. Because the grace to experience the possibility in yourself keeps helping you aim and redirect. And as you learn how to do it, every time you start to come down, the things that bring you down are your own clingings, fears, unworthiness, self-pity, stuff like that. And you just kind of, here, Mama, you take it. Here, Uncle, you take it. You take my stuff. I don't need it. And the quality of the guru, the quality of the free teacher is that they are like a pure mirror. And when you look at them, you only see your own stuff. Because they don't have any stuff. Because the only reason somebody else gets sucked in by your stuff is because there's something they want.
I want you to
Consecrate your life. He's a monk. He comes into that harmony only through his guitar. And the true king is the king who is not attached to his power. That's the one that becomes the great statesman. See, we have so lost our connection to who we are, to the flow, to the harmony, that everything seems weird. Even getting it isn't quite right, what you get in stuff in life. And the only way you're going to feel at home ever again in this universe is when your soul acknowledges its true identity. It's the only time, only, there's no other way. There's nothing you can think of that's going to be enough. Nothing. Every fantasy you've ever had. And I'm sitting in here just looking at souls. It's all empty show. It's all form. It's all passing dance. It's all passing show. He's a monk. He comes into that harmony only through his guitar. When you don't need your guitar, then your music will be God's music. Until then, it's still your music. At that point, if they're ready, can let go enough and trust their own intuitive sense, they look back and here we are, in love. Everything seems weird.
So come on, hit me before I lose my nerve.
This is crazy.
So go crazy. Let her in.
I don't know about
Who gives a shit? No one's watching. What do you care?
this. This is crazy. You want me to hit you?
That's right.
What, like in the face?
Surprise me.
This is so fucking stupid.
Motherfucker! Hit me in the ear!
That's right, that feels right, yes. To finally open just a little bit so you could experience a deeper level of your own being. Because I'm not it. It's it. Exactly right. It's it. And you are as much it as I am.
Hit me in the ear!
It's it. Exactly right. It's it. And you are as much it as I am. And the only thing that will ever satisfy you is when you know yourself, not when you know me better. You start out on the journey in a dualistic way. You can say God's out there, the guru's out there, there's nothing wrong with that, and you can love the guru and surrender and trust. That is a vehicle. It is a method, the same as meditation is a method, the same as study is a method. But if you start to love the guru, when you really trust and surrender and love, you look through and then you see you are loving a form. And you look through the form and you see another form. You love that more desperately. And you go through and through and through until finally you are looking in a mirror and you see yourself. And then when there is no attachment to your separateness, there is nothing to be seen any longer, then you are it. And then you come back a little to know it, and then go back into being it. That's that very fine balance. A fully free being is right here now, living life just the way you are living life. A perfectly liberated being could be living any one of your lives at this moment. You don't have to go and act like Buddha or Christ. You just have to live your dharma. You have to live in harmony with the forces that are acting on you at this moment. A river, when it becomes enlightened, doesn't become a tree. It just becomes a perfect river. The game has been designed so that what you are at this moment is perfection itself. You merely have to give up your models in order to recognize yourself. It's as simple as that. Honor it. Love it. Don't judge it. Don't judge it. Just allow it. Give it space. Give it all space. Give the universe space. Who would have ever thought that we could sit together, this many of us, in this silence? give ourselves that space. In order to become the conduit for that energy, you've got to keep giving it away. You can't hold it all for yourself. So we'll start right now.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
What do you want me to do? You just want me to hit you?
Come on, do me this one favor. Why? Why? I don't know why. I don't know. Never been in a fight. You?
No, but that's a good thing.
No, it is not. How much can you know about yourself? You've never been in a fight. I don't want to die without any scars.
Because we've been very blessed just to be able to be together and share this kind of consciousness. So now focus in your heart and breathe in and breathe out, as if you were breathing through your heart. But as you breathe in, imagine, for those of you that cannot experience, imagine that you are breathing in God's breath. You're breathing in light, energy, truth, love. Breathe that in. Let it pour through your body. Then bring it up to the point between your eyebrows and breathe it out. And send it out as peace and love to all the beings in all the planes of existence who are suffering. Start with people right close by you, people you know, people who are full of anger or pain, physical or psychological, who are lonely or hurt, people in the world who are starving, people in the world who are caught in the ugliness of greed and lust. Breathe in the energy through your heart that this room is permeated with at this moment. And let us, as a collective beacon now, understanding the power of thought, send out peace and love to the universe. Share your blessing. Breathe deeply.
Congratulations. You're one step closer to hitting bottom.
And then when there is no attachment to your separateness, there is nothing to be seen any longer, then you are it. And then you come back a little to know it, and then go back into being it.
I'm listening, but I don't know if what I hear is silence or God. I'm listening, but I don't know if what I hear is silence or God. I'm listening, but I can't tell if what I hear is the plane of emptiness echoing, or a keen consciousness that at the ends of the universe deciphers and watches me. I only know I walk like someone beheld, beloved, and known. And because of this, I put into every movement solemnity and risk. Well, I think we're so used to beauty being associated with what is pretty and what we have kind of sanitized into some culturally associated presentation of beauty. But I just have sat with so many people over the years, sitting with people who are dying and people who are dealing with cancer, and there's something exquisitely beautiful about these moments when we become utterly transparent, when we can no longer hide behind our facades of I got it together, or strength, or competency. So there's something very beautiful, I think, about our vulnerability and our willingness to show who we are. And that oftentimes shows up not in our successes or our abilities, but mostly in our places of frailty and vulnerability. And I find those to be exceedingly beautiful moments. They don't match the cultural expectation. There is a dark beauty to them.
When you first started speaking about beauty last week, I was thinking, well, what is beauty? Could you define it? And now this is reminding me it wasn't about what is beauty, it's about what do I experience.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about the capacity to receive, to take in that aesthetic moment, all forms of beauty. We need to be perceptive to all forms of beauty. Yeah.
First, you have to give up. First, you have to know, not fear. Know that someday you're going to die.
So often in my life, I feel really challenged by seeing the beauty of my own being in my own life. And so it's helpful to hear you talk about it in this way. And I don't want to just ask you a how-to question, like how do I see myself as beautiful? Because I think it's a lifelong journey, but I guess I want to name in presence that so often it's so easy for me to get outside of my beauty and completely disconnected from it.
Yeah, I think the layering of shame, the layering of feelings of worthlessness can make it very hard to perceive that beauty. So one of the things I would recommend, not to fix it,
First, you have to give up. First, you have to know, not fear. Know that someday you're going to die.
You don't know how this feels.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. First, you have to give up. First, you have to know, not fear. Know that someday you're going to die.
Without pain, without sacrifice, you would have nothing.
The bud stands for all things, even those things that don't flower, for everything flowers from within of self-blessing. Though sometimes it is necessary to reteach a thing its loveliness, to put a hand on its brow of the flower and retell it in words and in touch, it is lovely, until it flowers again from within of self-blessing. And some time ago, he invited his teachers to come from Tibet and Nepal and live here, so that they could be, direct transmission of the teachings. So they did, and they lived here for quite some time, and they began to notice something very peculiar about Americans, our Western culture. And he writes, he said, when they described it in their own terms, they called it soklong. S-O-K-L-U-N-G, soklong, a damage or blockage of the primary energy winds within the heart chakra. They called it soklong, a damage or blockage of the primary energy winds within the heart chakra. And that's a beautiful image. We're already taken into imagination. There's supposed to be this current, this exchange between inner and outer through the primary energy winds of the heart. But it's blocked or damaged, they say. He goes on to say, what they recognized was that something about our way of life in the West was putting a kind of pressure on the heart that led to a subtle level of pain and depression of the energies there. And one of the ways this manifests is in subtle yet deep insecurity, anxiety, and unhappiness. And they said it was caused by an early separation from the mother, an often detached and distant father, an obsessive emphasis on premature independence within an extremely competitive environment, and a porous or non-existent and supportive community, leaving us to fend for ourselves. And other than that, I think it's great. If we could just, bypass those few little things. But we take this to be normal. It's caused by an early premature separation from the mother. Leaving us to fend for ourselves. And we call this normal. This is just our culture. But what they're saying from the outside, looking at us, they're seeing what this has done to the fluency of the heart. That's caused this blockage or this damage to this, what's meant to be this ongoing exchange between here and there. How many of you know the work of Jean Liedloff? Continuum concept? Yeah? A few of you have heard about her book, her work? It's worth reading because she gives, again, another model for how it might have been intended to be. And we need reflections from outside of this culture because in our myopia, we think this is normal. And it's not normal. The continuum concept, Liedloff says, she was kind of an accidental anthropologist. She didn't really have this intention in mind, but she was invited to go down to South America and spend some time with, I think it was the Yaquana Indians. And while she was there, she began to notice something particular. They were happy. And they had more joy, she said, in a day than we typically had in a year. And she got curious about it, so she began watching the child-rearing practices. So the children basically for the first 2 years of life are in constant skin-to-skin contact. Constant. Held, back, belly, sleeping. There is this continuous reinforcement deep into the body that you are utterly welcome here, that you belong. There's none of this, premature independence. The independence happens when the child pushes away and says, I'm ready to touch the earth, to get on the ground. And she watched this and just saw how it affected the whole human aperture. So we need other models for what it might look like to be human beings in this world. So with these conditions, we're left with a kind of a chronic state of anxiety and caution. And I see this every day in my practice and every day in the mirror. This is what we carry in our body. Anxiety. The wounds of love shape our expectations around love. Okay? The wounds of love shape our expectations around love. So if the conditions of our early years were unheld, unseen, unwitnessed, that's typically what we end up encountering in the field of love out there. So when we get close, we're taken almost immediately into our most vulnerable territory. And I think it's meant to do that. I think love is meant to take us into our most vulnerable territories. And when core needs do not manifest for touch, for soothing, for affirmation, for support, recognition, or safety, a hole takes shape in the psyche. And into that hole rushes shame. Rushes self-doubt. And we do become cautious and hesitant of our reach out into the world, and also hesitant about what we receive coming in towards us. And in its stead, what we become obsessed with is ourselves. We become obsessed with ourselves, with improvement, with perfection, with growth, attempting to make ourselves lovable, which we fail at over and over again. As if, the fantasy in there is that somehow I could make myself lovable, or I could earn an ounce of love from somebody by how I performed. If I just did it right, I might be lovable. And we learn to guard our vulnerability with all manner of strategies. Perfectionism, rage, withdrawal, isolation. And they all work. Every one of these strategies works at the expense of any kind of connection. We might even begin to feel that we don't need touch or closeness or intimacy. And we begin to go into a fugue state where we almost expect loneliness to be part of our life, rather than seeing this as a symptom or a trouble. And we do suffer collectively with an enormous level of attachment disorders, not only to each other, but to the ground, to the earth itself. There's no way we could treat the earth this way if we were attached to the earth. So when I hear about an indigenous culture in South America or in Niger defending to the death their land against incursions by oil companies, it's because that's me. That's a profound level of attachment. Another way of saying attachment is that there's a blending of identity. The imagery around love is interesting to look at. In the traditions of the Greeks, we are familiar with the god Eros, right? And Eros is the one with the quiver of arrows. And Eros is the one who shoots that arrow at us, and that's when we are quickened by eroticism, by desire, by love. His arrows activate our desire for love, or our falling in love with someone. But we also are pierced by that arrow. The whole idea is that we suffer in love. We suffer in love. We bleed in love. So as we approach love, it activates, just when the word itself begins to stir so much in our imagination, in our emotions, in our thoughts, in our fantasies. It stirs our longings for warmth and intimacy, for belonging and safety. It stirs our wanting to be wanted, our wanting to be cherished. It stirs and activates our desires for touch and passion, for sexuality. But it also activates our fears and our wounds around rejection and abandonment, loneliness and betrayal, around shame and worthiness. It takes us quickly into our vulnerability. The moment we begin to approach love, we approach vulnerability. We suffer in love. We bleed in love. Love invites us to ripen, to mature into an adult state. Or was Rilke's great line that love is a high inducement to the individual to ripen.
I don't want to die without any scars.
Again, in all relationships, any deep committed relationship, the central issue in that relationship is not happiness or well-being. It is salvation. Intimacy is wounding. Intimacy is wounding. It's basically saying, get over it. If you're going to play in that territory, this is what's going to come with it. There's no way around it. You cannot avoid it, nor should you. To love is to evoke all that has been wounded. Any true partnership or any deep friendship will see right into the heart of your shadow and ask it to be touched. Because you cannot avoid what you can avoid on your own. Because you cannot avoid what you can avoid on your own. We clasp the hands of those who go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter this little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life, who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it except in fragments. I love that last line. No ear hears it except in fragments. But it is essential that we hear the fragment that comes into our being. Otherwise, the great song, the canto hondo, the deep song of the world will not be full. It won't be rich. So we have to catch the note that comes into us, the fragment of the great song that comes into us. That's our job.
feeling of wanting to be understood and loved and held by him, and his ability to do that are quite two different things. That your denial of that feeling of wanting that, that's what blocks you. Once you know you have that feeling, then you can begin to hear who he is and experience with some compassion his predicament of being unable to express his love. It's as if once you know that you're beautiful, acceptable, then when other people don't like you, it begins to you see it as their problem, not yours anymore. Until you have allowed your own beauty to be, you never see it as their problem. You always see it as yours. And all paranoia you take back in on yourself. So the first step of the game is what you started with, which is acknowledging your desire for love. And you'll sit with your feelings and allow them to be who they have to be. And your life will be that of somebody who needs love and doesn't get it. And you'll go through self-pity, and then you'll say, well, that's the way it is. And here we are. But to make believe you don't want it because you're not getting it, there's where the trap is. Can you hear that? As one lives. Mahatma Gandhi walks into his garden for a press conference. He gets shot, and at the moment he's shot, all he says is Ram, just the name of God. He just has time. He says the name of Ram as he goes, because he's so already with God through his life's work that the moment of transition of body to not body is just another moment in which he's with God. So once that starts to fall into place and feel right to us, then really the essence of a dying retreat becomes the essence of a living retreat. And then the question is how you use the experiences, the moment-to-moment experiences of your life, as a way to become optimally conscious, to be optimally in the spirit or with God. And so then you start to examine the various components of life in order to bring them into this same awareness that we're just talking about now. Because what you find is that you can agree with everything I've said, but that big chunks of life are totally unconscious. That you say, oh yes, I understand this, I understand what my life is about, but I'm really angry at so-and-so. And somehow that anger and that relationship never comes into the rest of it. It just stays in its little compartment. And what happens to a relationship when you understand that the meaning of the events and the experiences of your life is to awaken or to live in the spirit or to be fully conscious or with God or in your own true being? And you say, yes, but I have this relationship because I need love, or I have this relationship because But if you push this and push it, you see that ultimately everything must go into this same stew, and you have relationships in order to awaken.
Intimacy is wounded. It's basically saying, get over it.
And you have relationships in order to live in the spirit and to be with God and to awaken out of the illusion of your own separateness. And that's the real essence of relationship. It's the vehicle for awakening out of the illusion of separateness. And when you understand the integration of this higher wisdom with the daily life events, you begin to see how relationships are a form of devotional or dualistic. They're a form of yoga. They're a form of coming into union. Now, what you see in other human beings is very, very much affected by your motivation and by your perception of yourself and by your own preoccupations. If you are busy, if I say to you, who are you? And you say, I am somebody who is dying, then you will tend to see other people in terms of who's living and who's dying. If you are somebody who doesn't like your body image, you are inclined to look at other people's body image. If you are somebody who is preoccupied with your own personality, with your own depression, for example, you're inclined to look at other people in terms of their happiness. Why can't I be happy like she is? If you have a very judging mind in which you're judging yourself continually, then you see other people as judging you all the time. You tend to project outward what is familiar to you, which is the way you look at the universe. You assume other people are looking at the universe the same way. So that if you are preoccupied with your sexual desire system, and that colors your perception because it locks you in all the time, you will see other people as thinking that too. And by the same token, if you think that you are God and you see God in yourself, that's what you'll see in other people. recall when I was with Maharaji, I felt so inadequate and so unworthy that I would continually say to him, how can you send me away? How can you send me back to the United States where people are going to want things of me and I can't fulfill them? I'm not a dharmic person. I'm a totally impure person. I've got all this lust and this power trippiness and this insecurity, and what are you doing? You're just sending me into the lion's mouth and you're giving me no protection. You haven't given me anything to protect myself from my own impurities. I said, the worst thing I can imagine is that I can do damage to another human being, that I can do stuff that will create karma by creating suffering. And I said, I'm just too impure, Maharaji, you know. And Maharaji at that moment looked at me, and he looked at me like he was looking at a specimen. And he looked at my hair and my head, and he looked at my eyes, and he looked, and he came up really close, and he looked like it. And then he had me turn around. And I turned around, and he looked in my ears, and he looked, and he looked, and he looked, and he did this whole routine. It was a Marx Brothers routine, and he did the whole thing, and when I got all the way back around, he looked, and he looked very surprised, and he said, I don't see any impurities. And of course, my first reaction was that silly old man. You know, because obviously, any fool can see my impurities. But you see, any fool sees their own foolishness. And what he saw was his own godness. And he didn't see the impurities. It was my preoccupation with my impurities which was feeding the whole situation, not his. He was saying, you know, maybe there's another way to look at who you are. Is often to develop concepts and then to live within the concepts rather than in the immediate experience. So that you develop a concept of who you are and who another person is, and then you live in terms of the relationship between the concepts rather than in the immediate experience that exists between two human beings. For example, if you experience yourself as being a wise person and somebody else as being unwise, and you're caught in that label, then even if they say something wise, you can't hear it because you're so caught in your labeling. I mean, we've got to find behind all the symbology that there are living, breathing incarnations of God. We've got to see through the symbology. We can only see through the symbology when our attachments to those symbologies are cut through, when we've gotten rid of those attachments in ourselves. And if you need those things, then you're attached to them. If you need to be helpful, then you need people who are helpless. If you need to be sadistic, you need people who are masochistic. To the extent that you identify with any social role whatsoever, then you will seek out somebody to enter into a symbiotic relationship. You scratch my neurosis and I'll scratch yours. You let me be holy because you be profane.
I am somebody who needs to love but be rejected. So you've got to be somebody who needs to be loved and reject me.
To salvage, to bring in all that has been discarded, all that has been abandoned, all that has been neglected. And that any true relationship in its fullness becomes a place of welcome to all of what has been discarded. You get what I'm saying? In other words, our relationships should become quite dense. That it should rarely be just the two of us sitting in a room. We should be inviting in all of the outcasts, all of the ones who have not had a chance to speak, who have been silenced through shame. Now we're in the holy territory of love's purpose in a relationship. So true friendship is a place of inhabitation where the abandoned parts of us, of who we are invited into being. True friendship is a place of inhabitation where the abandoned parts of who we are invited into being.
If everybody gets caught in your game, you lose. Do you hear that one? If you win, you lose. And that's the horror of it. That's the horror of the way the mind creates these models and then seduces everybody into them. Because you feel secure in the model, but it's secure in your prison room. And that's the horror when the door is open and you don't walk out because you're too secure in the prison room. Then you get stuck again and again in the world of judgment. Better, worse. It's better to be young than old. It's better to be, fat than thin, or it's better to be thin than fat. And it's very weird when you move from culture to culture and it's all shifting. But if you see other beings, when you look into someone else's eyes and you see that there is just another being looking back at you, another entity, another soul, another patterning, another thing, another ray of God, or you can call it whatever you will, another bit of awareness. And that bit of awareness has around it all of this stuff, which is the packaging or the karmic manifestation or its predicament. And all these individual differences are like packagings around it, just like, and you don't confuse the contents with the container. But if you confuse yourself with your containers, you're going to confuse other people with their container. If you are busy thinking that you are primarily man or woman, if you primarily think you are sick or well, if you primarily think you're old or young, if you primarily think you're a mother or a child, then you are that's the reality in which your mind is working, and that's what you create for everybody else around you. And that ends up in judging. This person is a better mother, or better of this, or less good, or taller or shorter, or darker or lighter, or gooder or eviler, or whatever your polarities are. To look and see in another person that other thing that's just like you means that you can look at the individual matrices as the karmic unfolding, and then you can get into a space where you do not judge another being. You may judge their actions, but you don't judge the being. And that is the realm in which unconditional love can exist. I love you because you are God in form. And that is the realm in which unconditional love can exist. I love you because you are God in form. You are God in form. So what is the essence of conscious human relationships? To work through the relationship in order to arrive at the place where there is one awareness, but there are two bodies, two personalities, two astrologies. In other words, you work until the relationship exists where there is simultaneously the one and the two. And you use the two to arrive at the one. And it gets so that just as these two hands are clapping, and there is one mind and these two hands, and this hand isn't busy being the left hand and this busy being the right hand. They are just two hands doing their part to make the clap occur. So there is one awareness and two people. To work through the relationship in order to arrive at the place where there is one awareness, using relationships in order to awaken to God, to see who the other person is, see who you are, you yourself are, through the relationship. For a relationship to do that requires a tremendous amount of consciousness and space and meditation and intent. And it is hard work, as most of you who have ever been in intense interpersonal relationships have found out. Because in that one, in order to realize the oneness of the two, every bit of identification you have with the two has to be given up. You've got to give up the two into the one, and then from the one you will be the two. It's the difference between I am a man versus I am God that is being a man. What happens is, as the two go towards the one, you are literally dying into love, you are dying into awareness, you are dying into the oneness of it. And that oneness is called love, or it's called awareness, or it's called truth. And because of our attachment, our karmic attachment to our separateness, when a marriage or a relationship starts to work too well, we freak. And what you usually see in relationships is they end up being one person is running away, pulling back, and the other person is opening. I love you, why aren't you there for me? And the other person's pulling back. Then, after the other person's been like this for a while, they say, well, screw you, and they start to pull back. And the minute they pull back, the other person starts to remember how much they love them, and they start to go. And you see the dance going like this, and it doesn't really matter who's playing what part. It's just so that it's a conspiracy to keep from falling into love. Because when you fall into love, you cease to be. And so a conscious relationship has to edge in very slowly and very consciously. And it's why one needs so much meditative space in a good relationship to keep it living truth. Because usually when the fire gets hot, what happens is everybody starts to get singed a little bit. Ego gets burned. Ego burns. Soul doesn't burn. Ego burns. Ego starts to burn. The minute it starts to burn, it immediately pulls back into kind of mechanical habits. Hello, good morning, I love you. Ooh, do you know how much I love you? It's all can be done. All the rituals can be done, but there's no juice in it anymore. The living truth went out of it because everybody got scared. And I'd say most of the couples that ever come to see me that are having a hard time, they have the potential of incredible living truth, but they got frightened. And they pulled back, and then they both felt hurt and frustrated. The whole process is opening it up once again, and the way it is opened up is by wanting to have it open so bad that the two of you are willing to deal with the truth of the pain and the truth of the confusion and the truth of it all and stay in it. And be able to sit with another person and say what you feel and what you think, and not say, I won't tell her this because it would hurt her. That's the one that corrodes relationships. And the minute you have something in yourself you will not share to me with me, I become him. I am no longer us. If you and I agree we will be us together, we're going towards the one, we are us. But then I start to have, say, sexual desires for someone else. And I don't want to tell you that because it might hurt you. It would hurt you and you'd get furious. So I say, well, I won't tell you that. The minute I do that, I have set up a part of my mind which is now closed off to you. And every time I am in that part of that mind, you must become an object. You are no longer us. You must be her or him. And if there is nothing that I cannot share with you, then you and I are us. People don't understand how sensitive relationships are and how much living spirit demands living truth and how volatile living truth is. And what price you are paying for keeping it nice. The niceness between somebody who is being a patient and somebody who's being a nurse. The niceness between a husband and a wife. The niceness between a parent and a child. And I'll tell you, we cannot afford so much niceness because we are dying in it. And most of you, if you are like me, starve to death in that environment because you're so hungry for a living truth in human relationships. So when you are ready, what you offer, when you want to be out of your own prison cell, what you offer other human beings is the work you do on yourself. And the work you do in yourself is to come to the point where you are no longer identified with your individual differences. So all of your stuff and all of your stuff of your fears and aggressions and sexuality and embarrassments and all that, that's your stuff, which is connected with those matrices of individual differences. You are no longer identified with them, so you want them, you can have them. Because that's the way I can live in the spirit, because the spirit is that flow. And the minute I turn off that flow in order to protect myself because I identified with my perversion or my anxiety or my anger or my insecurity, I just turned off the world, I stopped the flow, I froze it, it all turns, it calcifies, it becomes an institution, and suddenly we are just bumping against each other. Don't get too close, don't come in, don't play. So what do you offer someone else? You offer them your truth. You offer them the irrelevance of your stuff. You can't imagine how refreshing truth is. You're also destroying the living truth that exists between people, and you're cutting off the person from real human contact, and you just did it again. It takes a little bit longer, and it's a little more painful, and it's kind of volatile to deal with truth. And the thing is that you cannot deal with truth with other people who don't want to deal with truth. That's the problem. The distinction isn't that you have to tell everybody everything. The important thing is that you have to be able to tell everybody everything. Okay? Then you are an open, free environment, and the other person can come and play if they choose. Can you imagine what it is like being in relation to someone in which you are merely right here and you're free and you're flowing and you got your stuff and you get angry and you got all that stuff which you acknowledge and it's right here, and if the other person says, how are you feeling about taking care of me, you can say how you're feeling if they're really asking, but you don't have to go up and say, you know, I really can't stand taking care of you. You don't have to do it. That's the psychological thing, the have to. You've got to listen to hear who other people are, and each person has to get what they got to get. If somebody wants to stay in their prison, you have the moral obligation to leave them in their prison. You have no right to force somebody out of their prison. And truth destroys prison walls. It's always an interesting question of whether you have to miss a step in the dance in order to awaken. And what I'm always impressed with is people who can make the transformations. Externally, there's continuity, and internally, there is tremendous change of being. Because every act you're doing, you could be doing from the consciousness you've got now, from the consciousness you used to have, or from the consciousness you will have. The same act may come out the same way, but its effects will be entirely different. You can feed another human being. You can say hello to another human being. You can do any human act, and it will have an entirely different effect depending on who's doing it and where they're doing it from. Because every act you're doing, you could be doing from the consciousness you've got now, from the consciousness you used to have, or from the consciousness you will have. And there is a way of shifting consciousness so that you look around and you see that what we are is a collection of souls in all these individual difference packages. And you can look further than that and see that we are all one in the form of many. Now, if you have seen that plane of reality, how does it affect this plane? When you come into this plane, you have the traces of that plane. And how do you live in this plane with the recognition that that plane is true? During the acid days, a lot of people would go up and they'd come down, and they couldn't figure out why they kept coming down. The reason they came down is because the life they lived on this plane was a denial of what they knew from these other planes. They, in effect, turned off the other planes. And now I'm talking about social action. I'm talking about the places you get to where you start to become able to live your life in a way that is harmonious with what you know on all these other planes. You literally die into service. You die into the plane of reality where you see that a starving person or a dying person or a hungry person or a frightened person is you. It's not her or him or them. You die in your separateness. The whole trip of what's good for me, what do I want, what do I need, what do I want, just becomes less interesting. And the minute that becomes surrendered, just given up, it falls away. It falls away from this deeper wisdom. And then you merely become an instrument of the flow of the universe. You become part of the Tao, part of the way of things. And the serving and that which is served is all part of it. It's all part of it. At that moment, there's no coming down or going up anymore. It just all is. That's when you become not mine but thy will. That's when you become an instrument of Christ consciousness. You just become the flow. And at that moment, that's where the power is. That's where the power is that changes the universe. When you can make yourself into zero, then your power is unbelievable. You are an irresistible force, where there is no high and there's no low, and there's no judgments and there's no opinions. There's no good and there's no bad. You merely are part of it. Another human being. You just are. It's no big deal. You are that which cannot hurt another human being. You just are. It's no big deal.